guys, Sri Lankan Sammi, retired with mom and dad. Welcome to my garden. I thought I'd do a show today from the garden. We're gonna talk about some of the best jobs I've had, some of the worst jobs I've had. I'm gonna compare my life in Canada and my life in South Korea. Sri Lanka, I don't really work, but you guys join me, why don't you? And we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna compare what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and some of the realities of working in the West and working in a foreign country. Sri Lankan Sammi, retired with mom and dad. Thanks for joining. Click the link down below and see what is going on. So guys, thanks for joining us. I really want to say a big shout out to all of my supporters. Lots of love to you from me and from mom and dad. Really appreciate it. If you like what you're seeing, you want to support the channel, click the link down below and buy me a coconut. Anything that you support will go towards me buying local fruit and vegetables from farmers and supporting the local economy. I truly appreciate it. If you want to passively support, just watch a commercial. Watch a commercial. I'm monetized, so watching a commercial helps support me in making better videos. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And to my Sri Lankan subscribers, Aiboan, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm Sri Lankan Sammi, retired with mom and dad. I am a Canadian citizen. Semi-retired in Sri Lanka. I'm a Sri Lankan citizen. I've been here for about 2 years after spending 13 years in South Korea. I grew up in Canada. I wasn't born in Canada. I was born in China. My dad was a diplomat, so traveled the world, landed in Canada, and I grew up there and worked in Canada for up until I was 38, 39, and then I moved to South Korea. And I was in South Korea for the last 13 years. And then I came to Sri Lanka. So what did I do in Canada? Well, my career was at the phone company. I was a salesman. And on the side, I liked to do marketing and promotions. So I had my hand in working in bars and clubs up until I became an executive at the phone company. So I did that a lot on the side. And when I look at my life in Canada and some of the best jobs I had, some of the worst jobs I had, you have to look at it from the perspective of stress, money, and fringe benefits. And then other people add things such as like security, job security. Well, there is no real job security, but there is more security in a career than a job. So working in bars and clubs and marketing and radio and television, there's no job security because one day it just can be over. And it happens so many times. Bars and clubs, they go like this. I think the best job would be a roving promoter, not working for a club. But then that job is based on how hard you work and how many people you bring in. And if you do it right, you can do well. But it's not easy. Trust me, I've done it. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. It is enjoyable if you like to socialize and party and all of that. And I know people have been doing it for 40 years, 30 years. Like I have this one friend in Toronto, Bill, from B&A Associates, or BNA, Bill and Associates. His company has been running for, I'm gonna say 30 years, 35 years. I've known him since I was in my 20s, and he's still running today. Don't know how he does it. Married with kids, I don't know how he does it. It's not easy. But as his age demographic has grown, so has his venues and stuff. So I guess he's doing well because I see his shows all the time. working for one club as an in-house host or something is not easy, because if the club doesn't last long, neither do you. And it's difficult to move to another club because they already have their own people. So it's not the easiest thing to transition from one venue to another. I personally was very lucky in South Korea to do that. In Canada, it was difficult. When I was working at one bar, I would work my way through the management positions, and then you get to a certain level and then it closes. It goes, they decide to close up shop. And it's difficult to transition to another venue. That's why I started working. I started working and at a career, because I needed a career. I was getting older, and I couldn't keep working in bars and restaurants and radio and television. I worked in radio for a while. I worked at CFNY. I worked at Q107, CFTR, in AM stations in Toronto, which was the pop music station. I did the marketing at concerts and public events, Canada's Wonderland, things like that. It was a lot of fun. I worked at some of the bigger clubs, the Copa, RPM, then the Government, and then what was the other place? Circa. I worked there. It was a huge venue, but the business kept changing and kept evolving. But then when I got older, I moved away from Toronto and I got married, and the birds are really out. And my career took off and I became an executive. So, I mean, the best job I had in Canada was when I was a salesman, when I was a junior salesman, because there was no stress in my life, because my job was telemarketing or inside sales, where I would deal with a certain sector of customers. And the thing is that once 5 o'clock comes, that's it. You can't work any past 5 o'clock because they're closed. Those businesses are closed. I can't call a customer who isn't there. So there's no real reason to stay after work. There's no real reason to come in early. And the paperwork was quite easy back then. There was not a lot of paperwork. And there's not a lot of meetings. There's not a lot of teamwork. So I'm not like doing work and then passing it on to somebody else, or I have files to send to somebody or something. I never really understand what a real job was, because I never had a real job. I was always a salesman. And I keep saying that to people. I don't understand this stress. Oh, I have so much work to do. I said, no, I don't. I have phone calls to make. So I have to make the phone calls between 9 and 5. And I have to get the meetings. And then I have to put together a proposal to send to the customer. That's the only paperwork I have to do. And those are templated. Those are so easy, because once you make one template, one proposal, you just template that to every single customer. And the customer doesn't want an original idea, he wants what worked with somebody else. So one of the things I was very good at as a salesman was selling the competition. So I would take a solution that was sold to one customer and I said, oh, by the way, do you have this problem? Oh yeah, well, this company that's exactly the same as yours, I wouldn't use the name, had the same problem, and here's the solution. Would you like to see it? Okay, here it is. And it's templated. So, we would share that in our teams, templated solutions. So it was quite an easy job, and it was a lot of money because it's commission. So I would work strictly for the commission. I didn't care about the salary. I wanted that commission. I was top salesman many, many times. I loved it. Working in a club, in a bar, in a restaurant, of course, that's fun. That's a lot of prestige, a lot of power, a lot of influence. Those are fun jobs. Worst jobs I had was working in the food service industry. KFC, Chinese food restaurant. Hated those jobs, summer jobs. But the one summer job I loved, which everyone was envious of, was when I was 16 years old. I worked at Canada's Wonderland. And I worked there for 3 summers until I was 18. And when I was 18, I got to work in the serving liquor. So that was so much easier. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun because great group of people that I worked with, and we always played afterwards. You know, you go on the rides, you hang out at friends' houses or whatever, and I mean, it's summer. What do you do in the summer, right? It starts in May and finishes in October. So it was a summer job. It was a great time in the summer. I spent the whole summer at the park. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, some of the worst jobs I had were working KFC. When I was like 14, I worked in a farmer's field, picking radishes. I remember that, I hated it. Laying sod. Oh, as you can see, Mom and Dad, they feed the birds. So the birds come here and they get the food. They usually come in the morning. The squirrels come and they get it. And we even have a parrot. So there was a monitor lizard in this garden yesterday, Mom said. They don't know where it went. It must have run away, they said. But there was a monitor lizard in here. The dog chases after it. Anyway, so I never really had a bad job. Oh, yeah, I did, sorry. When I was still young, before I started working in telecom, I worked retail sales, and I was good at it because I was, again, a salesman. So I worked, one year I worked at Le Chateau for their Christmas rush. So they hired part-timers to work just for Christmas, the holiday. And I did so well that they hired me as an assistant manager. But I hated it because they micromanage you and you have to follow the rules, and when you don't, they write you up. And I was like, just forget about it, I quit. I just walked out one day and they're like, oh, come back. I'm like, no, I'm not. You told me I wasn't doing a good job, so obviously you can find someone who can do a better job. So, and I talked about this the last time, about the stresses of life. And if you have debt, you can't quit your job. If you don't have debt, then you can quit your job very easily. So I worked for the 3 telephone companies. I worked for Bell, TELUS, and Rogers. I left Bell to go to TELUS because I was headhunted away for a huge amount of money, like insane amount of money, and a signing bonus I remember was ridiculous. I was there for 3 months and I came back to Bell. Bell was very happy to take me back because I was a good employee. And when I left, I said, I want to stay, but I mean, here's the offer on paper. I handed it to my boss. I said, listen, they're offering me this much. I can't say no. Please just do something and try to come close to it. And they couldn't because they were a union. They couldn't offer me more. So I said, I have to take it. I don't want to take it, but it's being put in front of me, and for the same job that I'm doing here. So they said, yeah, we can't do anything. And they were really sad to see me go. So when I called my boss 3 months later saying this was a huge mistake, can I come back? They said, no problem. I came back, I did 2 weeks of training, and I logged into my computer. My login was still active, my computer was still active, my desk was still there, and I had orders in my email. So the first month I made top salesman right away. It was great. I mean, that was one of the best jobs I had. And then when I left my company, when I was many years later, I was a senior executive, I went to Rogers, and that I hated because they were so unorganized. I liked the work, I didn't like the company. So yeah. Coming to Korea, being a teacher is not easy because, all right, I am under a permanent resident visa, so I can come and go as I want. I'm like a citizen, but other teachers are tied to their visa. So if they don't like their job and they want to quit, they have to leave the country in 2 weeks. They have 2 weeks once they put in their resignation to leave. and their housing is part of their contract. So the housing they live in belongs to their job. So they can't risk losing their job because there's a lot of investment of time and energy and what have you. So you get a lot of these teachers who work at private schools, not public schools, private schools, who complain a lot because they come into it with their eyes closed. They don't think before they come here. And they're young, but I wasn't involved in all of that because I'm permanent resident and I could quit anytime I wanted. They can't quit. And the boss knows that it pisses me off that I'll, walk out, and that angers the parents because the parents don't like changes in teachers. They hate that. For some strange reason, they don't like teacher change. Don't know why. Changing the teacher is actually quite good. For me, it's lucrative because when I get a student, if I do well, the student is forever. I've had some students now 2 years. Kids, 2 years. I had one adult 4 years. And he was a CEO of Samsung. Even when he retired, still, I taught him 4 times a week. It was an incredible job. But one of the things I hated was the micromanaging. In Korea, they don't give you constructive criticism. They don't give you criticism. They will tell you everything's okay, and then one day say, oh, you're a bad teacher, you're fired. I've had that happen. I was at a school for a year or something like that, and the teacher said, the head teacher or principal said, oh, you're teaching that class really, really well. I created that program and you're teaching it very well. And then 6 months later, oh, the parents are complaining and everything, I have to let you go. And that's what it is. It's about the parents. It's not about me. If the parents complain, the principal has to do something because they'll lose the contract, and the parents will go to another school and they'll write online how bad the school is, not the teacher, the school. So I learned how to work that system. So I remember that school. It was it YBM? No, it was something else. I can't remember. It was a very popular franchise. And about 3 to 6 weeks later, the principal called me to ask me to come back, and I said no. You said I was a bad teacher. Why do you want me back? Well, I made a mistake, really want you back. No, it's because the teacher you hired to replace me sucked even worse than what I did. So, and a lot of the teachers there didn't like me because I'm not on their visa. So I can come and go as I want. I do what I want, and because I spoke Korean, I talked to the other teachers in Korean. I talked to the management in Korean. I considered myself better than them, so that was a problem. I do remember one time back in Canada when I was a telemarketer working at Bell. Yeah, it was after I came back, and one of my co-workers was a real Dave. It was a real pickle up his butt. The guy didn't know how to use an iron. Okay? He would show up for work in and I'm always dressed. I wore a shirt and a tie. I didn't always wear a jacket, but I wore dress clothes. I was always the guy who dressed for the job you want, not the job you have. He came in a t-shirt and jeans. I'm wearing a suit. So I remember I came back from TELUS to Bell, and I came in on the Monday. So I left TELUS on the Thursday, and on the Monday, so Friday morning, I had my old job back. My VP and my manager said, you have your old job back, no problem, just come in on Monday. You'll have a week or two of training and you'll get back on the job. Great, so I show up in the morning on Monday and I'm just walking around the office saying hi to everybody. And it came back to me a little bit later that they thought that I was the new director because I'm showing up in a suit. So anyway, I did my training, and the trainer was one of my friends. He actually showed up in Korea a few years ago to visit with his wife, who is another employee who's Korean. And anyway, so Lewis was my trainer. He's training me, teaching me everything that has changed in the last 3 months. So anyway, I get back on the phone and I start posting huge numbers. I think it was the first or second month, or maybe the third month, Dave takes it upon himself to go into the system and track all my orders. The way we get compensated was on widgets. So if I sold 100 units, that's what I got paid on, not revenue, it was units. So we had to sell high-speed internet, telephone lines, internet access, web hosting, those kinds of things. And you would click on the sale and then process the order into the system, and it disappears into the nether and gets processed and billed to the customer. So I remember doing that. So part of the contract that I had when I came back is that I couldn't apply for any new jobs for 6 months or a year or something like that. And I wanted to get out of there, because that's the reason I left, is because I wanted to get promoted and there were no promotions available. There was a hiring freeze or some kind of politics going on. Anyway, so I'm working my butt off trying to be number one so that when the next promotion comes through or job opening comes through, I'll be number one on the list. So I'm working my butt off, and Dave takes it upon himself to like check my orders because I was number one, and I beat him by like 2 orders. To be like the top web hosting salesperson. And so I get called into the office one day, and the manager looks at it and says, you double counted one of these orders and it put you on top. And I'm like, okay, I didn't make any extra money on it because we get capped. So once you reach 100% of your quota, you don't get paid anymore. So I was like 117% over quota. So whether I oversold 3, 4, 5, 6, or 10, I wasn't getting paid extra. The company made money, or no, well, they made money on the actual sales, but I double counted one of the orders because I would place my orders during lunchtime or my break time, right? Because I didn't smoke, I didn't need coffee in those days, so I would just do all my orders quickly during my break, because the way the system worked is that if the computer will only allow you online during the sales period, during the working hours. So you only had that time to work, right? Because it was an automated system. You didn't call people, the calls were made for you. It's a telemarketing center. So anyway, I wanted to maximize, I work smart. I wanted to maximize my potential to earn. So the more calls you make, the more money you can make. So I did my orders after hours. I would write everything down and then punch it into the system after the fact. So, you know, I'm doing that very quickly. And one time, I guess, when I order number 7, I did order number 7 twice, or, you know, I did it in a month. I did that like 2 times or 3 times. So anyway, whatever. So I said, oh, okay. And then I knew who was doing it, right? So I had gotten a little paper certificate of top web hosting salesperson. So I went to afterwards, and he said, I'm going to have to, you know, remove that, and then I don't even remember the penalty. And so I took the little thing off my thing. Hey, Dave, here you go. You can have your little certificate for yourself. And he's like, oh, I didn't do anything. I said, listen, Dave, don't start. I said, not one of you, okay? I don't give a flying fuck about any of you. Excuse my language. I said, not one of you is going to be able to affect my future career in this company, okay? So you can say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. I got in trouble from my boss too. He says, you can't do that. He says, and I loved my boss, Linda, my manager. She was great. She left me alone because I made 2.5 times the orders of everybody else. I always made her bonus because she had a team of like 8 people, and they all had to achieve a certain amount for her to get her bonus. And I always made it for her because I did 2.5 times. I always achieved 100 and 60, 150%, right? So, you know, none of my coworkers liked me on my team because I didn't care about them, because they were all just, they were there for the long term. I was there for the short term. I was looking to get promoted. So behold, at the 6 months, boom, I go to my boss, I say, 6 months, I want to be promoted. And I got the promotion. So, yeah, you know, I knew my value, my worth. So in South Korea, the worst job I had was, I didn't really have a bad job, I had bad managers. Nobody quits a bad job, they quit bad managers. I had a bad manager. I had a bad recruiter who didn't pay me. I quit him. I quit, and you guys can check out the video about Carrot Global. Don't ever work for Carrot Global. Man, I am now making, I quit Carrot Global, and within 2 weeks, I recouped all of the contracts I lost. I stole 2 contracts for them to the new company, and I'm making like 2.5 times more. I just signed a new contract for 3 times my base pay at Carrot Global. And I'm making like 2 times, 1.5 to 2 times what I make at Carrot Global. They wouldn't give me a raise after like years of working for them. They wouldn't give me a raise because I don't work. Their policy is that you have to work online and offline. And I said, well, and I like asked them, why didn't you reply? Oh, well, because we're not going to reply to you, and if you ask again, you're going to be fired. I'm like, anyway. I discovered after the fact that that company has been going downhill, and they're losing money and teachers, and they have a high attrition rate internally. So the reason that they're getting so many contracts is because they undercut everybody. So like they'll advertise a job to the customer, or the customer will come to them with a bidding for like a job for a teacher. So they'll bid like $70 an hour, $60 an hour, and they'll only pay the teacher $30 or $40 an hour and keep the, you know, they keep their margin. So they undercut all the other companies. So, you know, I'm making upwards of $100, $120 an hour now, which is really good money for a teacher. I mean, that is 10 times what a teacher makes, a full-time teacher makes. Now, I don't work as many hours. I work about 20 hours, and I'm not making 120 on every single contract. Those are the adult contracts. My kid contracts are a lot less, but those are so easy. They're just, I'm just like sleeping. Those are the best jobs. The teaching kids jobs is so easy. I'm half asleep teaching those kids. The adults, a little bit more complicated, and this new contract is going to be tough because it's like a lot of work. I'm doing a lot of talking. Normally I don't do any talking because the kids want to talk and the parents want them to talk and the adults want to talk. So I think that's the best job I ever had. Obviously the best job I ever had was getting paid to drink and talk to girls when I ran a nightclub. I mean, I was making, for 3 nights a week, I was making close to $4,000 a month. And I drank and partied every night. It was the best job I ever had for 8 years. Ugh, if I could go back in time and do that again, starting back when I was a kid, I would have done that. So those are the best and worst jobs that I've ever had. If you guys want to comment below and let me know what you did that was the best or worst job that you ever had, that would be interesting. I'm Sri Lankan Sammi, retired with mom and dad. Remember, learn to live life. Don't let life live you. Be good to each other. I'll see you all on the other side.